Hello, my name is Megan Varner, and I am a health and wellness coach and physical therapist who works with individuals with POTS and chronic fatigue to help them rebuild their energy so that they can thrive again in their lives. I'm very passionate about helping this population as I myself have both of these conditions along with a connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome that I have been learning to navigate over the last decade plus and have definitely had my ups and downs. But bit by bit, I was able to rebuild my energy and get back to doing what I love, helping others learn how to thrive again and have more good days than bad. I want to remind you that all of my videos are for informational purposes only and do not take the place of medical advice. Please consult with your physician or care team before implementing any of the suggestions that I share in this video. So this video's topic has been a long time coming as I talk about breathing in many of my other videos and with quite a few of my clients. I want to give a little background as to why I'm very much into the power of breathing and how breathing can improve your energy. It was a missing piece to the energy puzzle for me for many years, and I'll share why in a bit. I had tried just about everything from compression and water and electrolytes to exercise protocols and trying more sleep, less sleep, changing my workday, actually totally changing my job, leaving my job, going back to school, leaving school. I have a very long story through all of that. It's actually on my website at www.guidetoresilience.com if you want to learn more. But the one thing that took a while for me to find was the power of tapping into my breathing. Now there's a specific type of breathing and combining that with biofeedback to understand what is going on with your physical body as you breathe that really helped get me back to where I am today, along with making some other shifts in my life. That is why I talk about it so much. So this video delves more into the science behind the breathing, and I'll be sharing some practical tips towards the end to see where you are with your breath and some ways to start to shift it towards a way that can help recharge that energy battery. So why is breathing so powerful? Well, breathing sends signals to our nervous system as it affects our heart rhythm. It also influences the balance, or what you could call homeostasis, in the body in a couple of different ways. Breathing affects our heart signals that influence our nervous system through a particular process that happens when we breathe in and when we breathe out. So when we breathe in, our heart rate increases, and when we breathe out, our heart rate decreases. This is governed by the vagus nerve, which is part of our autonomic nervous system. It has quite a bit of parasympathetic fibers in it that slow our heart rate when we breathe out. It's taking the brake off of our heart rate when we breathe in and then coming back on when we breathe out. This is called reflex sinus arrhythmia. It's normal. And using our breath, we can train our heart rhythm to get into a smoother pattern. We can help the vagus nerve modulate our heart rate and potentially over time help with vagal tone. But what's actually happening when we breathe out is we're getting more squirts of a particular neurotransmitter called acetylcholine into our system. That is the main neurotransmitter of the parasympathetic side of our nervous system that helps with slowing our heart rate. But it's not just breathing, it's breathing in a way that helps efficiently boost our energy. The muscles that we call on when we breathe, the depth that we breathe, and the rate that we breathe affect the influence on our nervous system and on the homeostasis in our body. So if we're breathing in a more shallow, a faster rate, or if we stop breathing, oftentimes when you're stressed, if you're concentrating a lot, and some post having a virus, you just stop or forget to breathe. That affects the body. Or if we're more of a chest breather, having the breath coming from our chest versus down in our abdomen, we're not really filling our belly with air. All of those styles of breath aren't shifting us into that parasympathetic restorative state. they're actually shifting us more into a alert, aroused, sympathetic state, which there's a time and a place for that. There's actually a style of breathing out there where you're doing a longer inhale and a short exhale that kind of revs you up and can increase your blood pressure. For some of us, that can be helpful. However, if we breathe in this way on a regular basis all day long, this can really tire us out. And when you compound that in for those of us that have POTS or other conditions that shift us into more of a persistent sympathetic state, we're pushing ourselves even into more of that state with how we breathe. This can lead, when we're trying to compensate or our body's getting tired, to call on some accessory breathing muscle. What do I mean by that? The muscle that we primarily use to breathe is our diaphragm and some of the outer muscles that line the areas between our ribs. When we breathe in, our diaphragm goes down, lungs fill with air, it's kind of a vacuum, pulling everything full of air, and when we breathe out, it comes back up. Now, if that belly isn't expanding and allowing our diaphragm to go down and fill our lungs with air, we can start having some compensations elsewhere where we recruit more of the muscles in our neck, in our shoulders, in our upper back area, in our chest. We may even kind of brace ourselves with our arms. Those accessory muscles kick in. When we're in more of that shallow breathing, rapid breathing to try to fully fill our lungs with air because we're not letting our belly expand. And guess what? When we use more muscles, we ask our body for more oxygen. And when we're not breathing efficiently, our body cells, those include our muscles, are not getting the oxygen delivery that they need. That kind of brings me to my next point. I know this is getting a little sciencey, but bear with me. So when we're over breathing or under breathing, we can change the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide in our system. Our body actually needs a certain amount of carbon dioxide present to help the oxygen that is bound to hemoglobin carried throughout our body to be released into our cells, tissues, and organs. And when we overbreathe, either breathing really deep or too fast, or potentially if we're breathing more shallow, we can have either a buildup of oxygen or a reduction in carbon dioxide, or vice versa. When these get off, the body's ability to have oxygen where it needs it, and also another substance called nitric oxide, changes because our acid-base level is affected by our breathing. Pretty cool, huh? Oxygen is essential for life. It's needed for growth and repair of our tissues. It's needed even for glucose metabolism, or converting what we're eating into energy. And it's also involved in kind of reproducing or dividing of cells as well. Nitric oxide is something kind of pushed out there in the athletic world, but it helps with circulation, with blood vessel dilation, with signaling of hormones in our body, with transmitting nerve signals. So when nitric oxide and oxygen aren't reaching where they need to because of the way we're breathing, we can actually have quite a bit of processes affected. This next piece was really interesting to me, and the fact that I talk about electrolytes a lot for clients to manage their symptoms, that if we are over breathing and our carbon dioxide levels are going down and our body becomes a bit more alkaline, so our pH goes up, it can affect the electrolyte balance in our body. So calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, and those electrolytes influence the fluid balance in our body. They're involved with lots of other processes too, with nerve transmission and muscle contraction, to name a few. But if you're struggling to balance those electrolytes, consider how you're breathing. Getting that acid-base balance off in our body and having a higher pH can actually affect how much our kidneys excrete as well, also influencing fluid balance. So, do you have encouragement to figure out if you're breathing well or not? So I often get asked, what are the symptoms if I'm over breathing? I'm breathing too deep, or I'm breathing too frequently. Well, some of these symptoms may sound a little bit familiar, and some of these symptoms can definitely be related to other things, but consider this. Symptoms include dizziness, heart palpitations, increased heart rate, chest tightness, tightness in your actual respiratory tract, brain fog, nausea, difficulty concentrating, feeling kind of dissociated, muscle tension, sweating, shivering, trembling, tingling or numbness in your fingers and toes, blurry vision, dry mouth, to name a few. And if you're underbreathing or if you're not breathing enough, referred to as apnea or apneic events, that can actually long-term lead to heart rate and blood pressure and put your body into more of a stressed state, shifting you into more of that sympathetic mode that over time can be draining. So, all of that said, how do you assess how you're breathing? And then how do you shift if you are breathing in a less optimal way? Well, I typically like to start with a very basic hand placement, and it's super helpful because it helps you kind of tune into your body and feel what's going on. Putting a hand on your chest or your breastbone and one hand on your diaphragm, and seeing as you breathe in and out what happens with your hands. Are they moving equally? Is one moving more than the other? Is the chest rising and falling and the belly really isn't doing much? Is the belly moving and the chest is staying pretty stationary? That's actually what we're aiming for. To have the air come in and your belly expands and your hand moves out a little bit, and then as you breathe out, your belly sinks back down and your hand moves in a bit. Is your breathing fast or is it slow? I get asked frequently, well, how fast is too fast? Well, people can breathe anywhere from, on average, if you're just sitting there, 12 to 18, maybe 20 breaths per minute. So setting a timer and counting how many times you breathe, it's a little easier if someone else is counting you so you don't change your breath. If you're breathing really quickly, you can reduce it by half and slowly train yourself to change to a slower pace of breathing. It ranges, but if you get down into like 4.5 to 6.5 breaths per minute, you can really shift your body into a restorative state. Everybody's is a little bit different, and that is what biofeedback can really help with. So pairing up with someone such as me or someone else who is trained to help give you some feedback with that can get you on the road to figure out what pace really gives you the most boost for your nervous system and your heart and your blood vessels. And last but not least, are you breathing through your mouth? Mouth breathing can actually shift us into more of a fatigued state, and it doesn't really fill our lungs quite as well. We often breathe more shallow. There's some great information out there about nasal breathing versus mouth breathing. Nasal breathing helps filter the air, it warms the air, it creates a little bit more of that negative pressure to pull that air down into our lungs, deepening our breath and helping that gas exchange occur. It also can increase the amount of nitric oxide that gets exchanged in our system. Like I mentioned, that's a pretty important piece when you're trying to figure out some of the whys behind feeling tired. And it can help our body better respond to stress when we feel threatened if we're breathing through our nose. So in those moments of feeling overwhelmed and stressed, or in those moments of feeling fatigued, as is the point of this video, I encourage you to tap into your breath and to begin to explore this as a tool that you can use to help rebuild your energy. If you want some guidance and direction as to where to start, I do offer a free consultation with any potentially interested client. You can reach out to me here on YouTube by dropping a comment here below the video, or you're welcome to email me at megan.varner@guidetoresilience.com. I've also put a schedule link below this video if you'd like to check out my calendar and pick a time slot. And I will share too that I do teach different types of breath work to help restore and rejuvenate the nervous system in a class that occurs every Saturday at 11 a.m. It's called Mindful Motion. There's a link below the video if you'd like to check it out.